So, you're making a drift car, and after following some guides online and copying some YouTuber, you've come to realize that your car, it still kind of sucks. That's why today in this video, I'm going to be showing you the most basic but most effective ways to tune your drift car in BeamNG so you can spend less time being frustrated at a poorly set up car and more time having fun laying down rubber around the track. So welcome to Talks with Noise. If you enjoy videos like this, and so I know I have an audience to make videos like this for, then please hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notifications, and also if you're trying to find something quickly in this video, I've enabled timestamps so you can quickly get to those sections of the video, and also leave a like before you get there so other people can find this video. So now, YouTuber jargon out of the way, let's get into a topic that's going to give you the most performance out of your drift car, and that's going to be choosing the correct tire. Now, a common misconception is that the front tires on your drift car should have the most grip, while the back tires should have the least amount of grip. And the reason why this is incorrect is that the back tires on your vehicle need to have a certain level of grip to keep control of the angle of your vehicle. If you go with tires that are way too slippery, then the back tires are going to spin out in front of your vehicle, and it's always going to be a mess. It's going to feel like you can't drift the car because the back tires are not going to be giving you any control. A good rule of thumb is the more power you're pushing through your vehicle means the more grip you should be going with, and also the faster you should be drifting. So if you're trying to go with a beginner car, power is not going to be the answer and grip is not going to be the answer. But always caution on the side of having more grip than having less grip, because a very frustrating thing to do is constantly get into a car that just wants to spin out. You want to have some level of grip again to control the vehicle, so keep this in mind. If you want a grippy tire, then wide and low pressure is going to be your answer, and you can also go with a sticky compound such as sports tires. But if this is too much and it feels like your car constantly wants to stick to the ground and it doesn't want to drift, then you can start to make your tires more narrow, and you can also start to boost up the PSI, and also standard tires are perfect for drifting on low powered cars as well as the drift tires. A lot of people will tell you that BeamNG's drift tires are absolutely terrible, but the thing is, as long as you're not pushing too much power into them, they actually drift very well. Kind of slow, but that's what you would expect from a lower powered car. So now that we've spoken about tires, let's go into the actual power of your vehicle. Alright, so you know to match your grip with your level of power, but how much power should you really be pushing? If you're trying to make an easy to drive drift car, you should aim for about 300 horsepower if the engine is naturally aspirated. This means no turbochargers, no superchargers, just the engine pulling in raw air. A naturally aspirated engine is going to instantly give you power whenever you push your foot into the pedal. It's going to be very predictable, very easy to drive, but as soon as you go into superchargers and especially turbochargers, you have to anticipate the lag that comes with these types of intakes. In terms of engines, the easiest one for you to learn to drift with is probably going to be a V8, because they have a lot of lower end torque, which allows your back tires to keep on spinning as you let the revs die down too much. They also tend to produce a power performance curve that looks like this, which has a nice little plateau towards the top, and this is going to prevent your back tires from running away and spinning your car out. Another great way to prevent spinning out is going to be having good throttle control, because I don't want to tell you to go with a V8 if your problem is having a lead foot. Engines like the Flat and the i4 tend to keep on increasing power with revs, but as long as you have throttle control, they are very manageable and fun to drive. If you decide to slap a turbocharger onto one of these, which you probably will, do note that going with more is usually going to be less, because the larger your turbocharger is, the longer it's going to take for it to spool up and the more boost lag you're going to have. So try to dial back your turbocharger and start to work your way up. So besides power, what is going to be the best drifting platform? And this is going to come down to what you're trying to accomplish, but having a front end heavy vehicle is going to be the easiest to drift because you don't have a lot of weight above the back wheels. They're going to easily spin and rotate around the front of your vehicle. Going to be super easy to maintain angle in a car like this, but it's typically going to be a little bit slower. And if you're trying to keep things really easy, go with a car that's got a long wheelbase, like the Bastion, the Moonhawk, and also the Barstow. By the way, these cars all have V8s that you can stick into them, so very good entry cars that you can drift with. And I think as well, doesn't the Blue Buck have a V8? I'll have to look back at that. If you want a car that's going to be a little bit more agile, a little bit more fast around the track, then try to go with a car that's got about a 50-50 weight distribution. This is going to be like the 200BX if you start to tune in and modify it a little little bit to get that weight towards the back of the vehicle. Or I think the Sunburst you can also do it on as well in a lot of other cars. You'll have to experiment with this. I usually stick with the 200BX. I don't know what else you can really do this with, but there's a lot of cars out there you can get to that 50-50 point. Try it out. The cars feel a lot faster, a lot more aggressive, and it's kind of where I think you should try to work towards. If you're trying to make your car perfectly balanced, then pull up the weight distribution app, and this will allow you to see how much weight is towards the front of your vehicle and how much weight is towards the back. So if you add in a roll cage, it's going to pull the weight towards the back of the car. Add in fuel, reduce fuel. You can do a bunch of little things to play around with the weight distribution of your vehicle. But what if you put the weight towards the back of your car? This is going to be like having a mid-engine vehicle, and it's going to make drifting a lot more difficult in kind of a different way. It's going to give your back tires a lot more grip. It's going to make your drifting a lot faster, but it's going to be really difficult to keep angle. So you're always going to constantly be fighting the vehicle to try and maintain that angle. And also, whenever you lift off the throttle, typically you're going to get snap over steer. It's a different type of drifting and one that I think you should try out, but it's going to require a little bit more experience. At this point in time, the SBR is really only the car I think you can try this out with at the moment. Bolide, it's a suicide mission. Let's talk a little bit about suspension, and we're going to kind of gloss over the subject because it's kind of difficult to understand, and I'm not quite there yet myself, so we'll keep it for an advanced video. But the thing is, whenever you slam your car down to the ground, it's going to make your suspension a lot more touchy. A lot of people don't know this, but whenever you start to compress your vehicle into the ground, the geometry of your tires and the wheels are going to start changing, and the more you start to compress it, they change faster and faster and faster. So whenever you start to lower your vehicle, it's going to be a lot more touchy in how that suspension reacts, and it's not something that you technically want to do when you're trying to make a drift car that's easy to drive. So personally, I drive a car with the suspension at stock height. It's easy to predict how the car is going to react. It just naturally sways. It feels great. And whenever you start to lower the car, it feels a lot more twitchy and difficult to control. And again, we'll keep all this for a future video because I kind of know how to tune it, but I don't want to give out incorrect information on it. Something I do know quite a bit about is the alignment of your car. And this is something that a lot of people like to overlook as well because it doesn't seem like it's going to be a very big factor when you're drifting your car sideways and your car's doing all these crazy little things, but alignment of your vehicle is really going to play into how your car wants to drift, how it doesn't want to drift, and how much grip your back tires have. So first thing we're going to talk about with alignment is going to be the toe of your vehicle. And if you don't know what toe is, if you look down at your feet, you're never going to forget this. Great way to remember it. Look down at your feet, you see your toes. If you look down from the top of a car, look down at the car, you see the toe of the tires. And if you stick your feet inwards towards each other, it looks like you positively have to take a pee. Stupidest way to think about this, but you're not going to forget it now. So if you point the tires inwards on a car, the car has positive toe. And if you point the tires outwards, it looks aggressive, it looks mean, it looks like it's in a negative mood. This is negative toe, right? The toe is outwards. So whenever you're making a drift car, you want to have the toe being at about 0 when you're first starting off, because it's going to be kind of like the manufacturer suggested settings. Whenever you go into a corner, whenever you start to steer your car, the weight is going to transfer towards the outside tires of your vehicle. And this is going to cause the suspension on the outside of your vehicle to compress, and it's going to cause your front tire to start to toe inwards. It's going to give it some positive toe, and the car is going to try turning naturally in the direction that it's trying to head. And then on your inside tires, the suspension is going to uncompress, and it's going to cause the front inside tire of your vehicle to toe outwards. So the car is going to naturally steer in the direction that you're trying to turn. And if you start to tow your vehicle out too much, then the car is going to be a little bit too snappy and it's going to be harder to control. Let's make sure that the front of our car and the back of our car is set up to be at 0 degrees toe. And the way we're going to do this is by going into the app settings, pull up the wheel debug app. It should look somewhat like this. And then you have the front right tire, the front left tire, the rear right tire, and the rear left tire listed here. We have camber, caster, tow. We're going to be focusing on tow here. So whenever you load a car into BeamNG, the suspension is not going to be settled in yet. So drive your car around a little bit, upset the suspension, and then stop the car and get it to settle back in. And now we can see the toe of our car. Kind of negative, so it's going to be a little bit snappy here. Back tires being negative, super, super bad. You do not want the back tires to be negative. It's going to make the car feel ridiculously snappy. It's going to want to turn a lot. And to make sure we're on the same page, because I know this can be confusing, back tires being negative is going to be the exact same as the front tires, right? They're going to be kind of facing outwards. It's going to look like a little bit more ridiculous being negative in the back of the car in comparison to the front of the car, but back tires, make sure those are at 0 degrees. Just for the record, we are tuning the alignment under the vehicle config tuning menu, and once you hit apply, the car is going to reset, so you have to once again disrupt the suspension, let it settle back in, and then see where your toe ended up at. And once we get it to 0, we're going to come back to it, but we're going to move on because we need to see how the car feels before we start making some minor adjustments to the toe. So the next thing we're going to work on is something called camber. Now, the camber is whenever you look at the car from the front of the vehicle, and this is going to apply with the exact same logic of if the car looks like it's negative, it looks kind of mean, the camber's negative. And then if the car looks like it's doing a little potty dance, it's positively having to take a pee, right? It's stupid, but easy way to remember it. Now, the way we're going to set up our camber is by turning our steering wheel, and we're going to turn our wheel to about 80% of full lock. So my wheel will turn about 1.25 times to full lock. So if I multiply that by 80% or 0.8, I get about 1 turn of my wheel. And what this is going to do is it's going to show us what the angle of our leading tire is going to be at. If we look at the front of this car, it's got quite a bit of positive camber at this point. And whenever we were looking at it before, the camber was at about 0. And the reason why this happens is as you turn your steering wheel, the suspension is going to react dynamically to it. And suddenly our lead tire, the tire that has the most weight above it, the one that we need to be guiding the vehicle, is completely offset and it does not have enough grip at this point. So into the settings we go, and we're going to set the camber to be far more in the negative because we want that front tire to go from being positive to being perpendicular with the ground so it can give us a lot of grip while we're trying to lead the car with that front tire. If you've done this already and it feels like your car wants to do nothing but oversteer, instead of tuning your camber at 80% steering input, try doing it at about 70% or maybe 60%. Make sure to use the advanced wheel debug app so you can see that that front tire is perpendicular at those steering inputs, and as for the back tires, make sure the camber is at about 0 degrees or perfectly perpendicular with the ground. And just to make sure this video is future proof, and I'm not saying this is going to happen, but if you have a lot of wear on the inside of your back tire, make that tire slightly positive with the camber, and if it's on the outside of the tire where the wear is happening, then make the tire slightly negative. Once you get your camber dialed in, let's move into something called caster, which is where people really start to mess up because the more caster you add to your vehicle, the more the car is going to want to self-steer, and it feels great, but you're actually kind of destroying the suspension setup whenever you're doing this, which we'll talk about here in a second. But anyways, caster is kind of like, as you might imagine, the caster wheel on a shopping cart. It's going to allow your car to self-steer, especially if you have a steering wheel. But if you're going with like a keyboard and a controller, this is not going to matter too much. But just note that by increasing the caster, you're going to increase your wheel feel. But also by increasing the caster, you're going to affect how drastically your suspension changes as you go throughout your steering. You can actually get a ridiculous amount of caster put onto your vehicle, put it all the way into the positive, and next thing you know, your car is actually starting to lift up whenever you're going full lock because it's causing your tire to go all the way from negative to positive camber, a ridiculous amount of positive camber, and it's going to lift up the front of your vehicle. Now, you might be saying, Talks, I really want to have a bunch of positive caster though. I want that self-steering that I get at my wheel. I like it to be aggressive, and that's perfectly fine, but something that I want you to realize is that by increasing the caster, going well above factory settings, you're going to amplify how much your camber goes from being negative whenever your steering is straight to being positive whenever you turn your car. And this can lift your vehicle, it can cause bump steer, and it can cause your car to feel a little bit more erratic. Something I almost forgot to mention as well is with caster, it's going to affect your leading tire. So if you have a bunch of caster, it's going to affect how your tire starts to steer as it's affected by getting bumped, as you start to get that bump steer. So it can make your car feel unstable as well by your lead tire being very finicky. So increasing caster makes your car feel unstable, but it also gives you a lot of feel in the wheel. So there is a balance point, and I recommend you stick close by the factory settings, what the caster is originally set to. Once you adjust your caster, then it's back to adjusting your toe and adjusting your camber. It's kind of a thing where you adjust one thing and you have to go back and check the others again. So once we go back to adjusting our toe, and if you start to feel your car out and you start to feel how your car drifts, maybe it feels a little bit understeery, like the car really doesn't want to turn inwards, and this is where you can give yourself a little bit of negative toe. So I usually go with about negative 0.5. Feels really snappy then. A lot of people don't like it, but you can kind of play around with this. As you start to go negative with your toe though, that's when your car is going to start to feel snappy, and it's also whenever your car is going to be really unstable once you start to get onto like highway speeds. So if you're doing yourself a career mode drift car, daily driving that vehicle is probably not going to be the greatest thing to do. You're going to be wrecking it all the time, insurance rates go up and stuff. If you haven't played career mode yet, I cannot wait for it. I'm so excited. I know there are a ton of other points to touch base on, but we're going to save that for a future video, such as Ackerman, suspension I really want to touch base on eventually. You have limited slip differentials, not too bad. Dial back the coast rate, power lock rate, crank that up. And then I think a lot of you are running with welded differentials. That's kind of what I do. Very simple. But anyways, hopefully this video helped you out. I really wanted to get this out there, and hopefully see you guys in another video. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.